It's appropriate, Katie, that there are two of us tonight because we're going to be talking about a movie about clones, Mickey 17, directed by Bong Joon-ho, adapted from a novel called Mickey 7 by Edward Ashton. Apparently, they added 10 more expendable clones for the movie. So the film came out just last week. It had been sort of on the shelf for a little bit because of the writer's strike, or not the writer's strike. I think it was it was one of the many strikes that happened last year, and so they were finally able to get it across the finish line and into theaters. And time will tell on these things, but it didn't have the greatest opening weekend. I think it was number one at the box office with $19 million against a pretty hefty budget, and that's kind of where we are, where the something in the high teens can be the number one movie in America, and I don't know. But does it deserve a wider audience? We're going to talk about that and get into our thoughts on the film and all that good stuff. But who are we? We are two of Earth's mightiest critics. I am Ian Simmons of Kicking the Seat, and of course we have Katie Glidewell. No longer the blondish in front. You are fully back. You are the blonde in front, ma'am.
I am back, baby. I am the blonde in front.
And it's you never really went anywhere, but we are glad that you're back in full persona, because and I'm so happy that you're still here and still kicking butt. So thank you for joining as always. This was Bong Joon-ho's follow-up to his Academy Award-winning film Parasite in 2019. Was that? It was. Yeah,
it was that long ago.
I want to say it was. I could be totally wrong about that.
Yes, because Parasite was competing against 1917, which 1917, I believe so, because 1917 was my pick for best film of the year, and it went to Parasite and all that. So yeah, that would be 2019. So yeah.
And that was one of the last years I actually cared about the awards, because I was kind of in that same boat. Like I loved both of those movies for various reasons, and I'm like, well, if one's got to win it, then the other one's still great. So, but this is, Bong Joon-ho tends to be very, I guess I'm going to say activist minded, or he likes a lot of his films to say something. Dealing with environmental issues, social caste system issues, and this movie is no exception. It's about it takes place in, I want to say, 2054, but not the very far-flung future. But Earth is kind of turned to garbage, and so people are exploring space. And there is a guy named Mickey who we meet on an ice planet, and it turns out he's an expendable clone, as I mentioned, who's been set out there as part of an expedition to try and colonize this ice planet, see if people can make it habitable. It's all under the, I guess, being overseen by this charismatic, fanatical, kind of religious person played by Mark Ruffalo. Why can I get his name up? It's funny. Oh, Kenneth Marshall. Kenneth Marshall. I want to say Chuck Russell, but that's the thing. But Kenneth Marshall is, we'll just say that he plays a figure that many have compared to the current president of the United States. And we'll get into all of that later. But yeah, it turns out there have been a number of these other Mickeys before him, and we get a flashback to the original Mickey Barnes, a kind of down on his luck earthling who kind of sells his body to science to be part of his expedition, not fully realizing that it meant that he'd have to be killed so that his 3D imprinted body could be reprinted every time they need fresh meat to, say, go out and fix something in space or land on a planet and see if there's a flesh-eating disease about that they can cure using his body and then create a vaccine for the people on the ship. Very fascinating stuff, very kind of classic science fiction. What does it mean for humanity? What does it mean to die? That question gets asked over and over again in this movie. But it turns out there's a couple of wrinkles. One, the ice planet is actually inhabited by sentient creatures. And also, Mickey, even though every time he dies, he's supposed to be regenerated, at one point, much like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, he does not fully die, but they print a new one anyway. So then we're faced with a Mickey 17 and 18 situations, and wackiness ensues. So that's my high-level synopsis of the film. Did I leave anything key out?
No, I think you talked about Bong Joon-ho, and as you said, a number of his films always have some sort of like activism sort of message behind them. With this, talking about Mickey, human experimentation, the goods and bads of it, colonial colonization, and immigration and stuff like that, and how, hey, we're brand new people, we're going to come to this planet and we're going to make it ours. It's like, I'm sorry, this is my house. What do you mean that that's not how this is going to work? And just the one track mindedness. It's like, they're already here. Like, we're not going to wipe out this species just because we arrived. It's like, why not? That's what we do. It's like, yes, many messages that this film has. But no, I think you that was a very succinct and actually perfect synopsis of the film. You did miss, there is a little bit of humor.
Yeah. There's a lot of humor. This is this is a bona fide sci-fi dramedy, I would say, because there are some serious moments or some tense moments, but it is a very kind of a wry look at the human experimentation, and it's one of those things where I'm not going to bury the lead. I did not like this movie really at all.
Okay,
but I was fascinated enough by it, and after doing a little bit of digging, because I know it was based on a book that came out very recently. I think it was like 2022, although it was they started writing it in 2015, if I recall correctly. So it's a recent novel, and there are a lot of differences between the screenplay and what was in the book, from what I understand. In fact, I think it's a Screen Rant article that I'll put down below that kind of breaks down some of those differences. And I was like, okay, I feel like the book is going to have what I was looking for and not finding in the movie after about the 30-minute mark. This movie's 2 hours and 17 minutes long, and for me, I kind of checked out after about minute 30.
I did not check out after minute 30, but you definitely feel that over 2 hour length of the film. In fact, there's a section at the end that was completely unnecessary. And I remember after the screening, I talked to a number of people, and like, there's like a dream sequence and stuff. And I discussed it with them, and I was like, was that pointless? Like, I didn't understand what the hidden meaning was for that. I didn't understand, like, if there's supposed to be some existential thing going on or something. Like, there shouldn't be any guilt. Like, I honestly don't know why. That just seemed so superfluous and just so unnecessary that it's like, I could have already been at my car if you hadn't like done this. But I like the fact that some may say they may have over-explained some of the things with Mickey, but then also stuff that happened on Earth, that the reason why things were legalized or illegal and why they had to do them in space. I actually liked the different little backstories, and I could possibly see this maybe being some sort of a series and stuff like that, because it seems like there's a lot of different things, like with the fact, like when you have the multiples and why they're illegal on Earth, but you can technically, you're not supposed to they're supposed to be illegal in space too. And I really liked that little backstory, and that it seemed like it was a little long, but I actually liked every detail that he put into that. I love the relationship between Mickey and Nasha. That to me, I thought I really liked that, especially when you see them when they meet, but then later on in the film, seeing how she cared for every single one of those Mickeys and all of the horrendous things that each Mickey went through. It's like, because to her, it's like, no, you're my Mickey. It's like, I'm going to be there for you. I'm your ride or die. And I just thought that was just a beautiful relationship that, despite the craziness and weirdness and all the stuff they went through, I really like that. But I also love, I want to make sure I say her name right. Why am I blanking?
Was she the other one who
Naomi Ackie.
That's the actress, yeah.
Yes, Naomi Ackie, who
yeah.
I love her, and I loved her in Blink Twice. So then seeing her in this, like right next to so close to each other, that was a nice little that I felt like that was a nice gift for me. I'm like, good, I love you. I want to see you in more movies. So I'm glad I'm seeing this. But it definitely, I mean, look, Snowpiercer is one of my favorite films. This is not going to be one of my favorite films.
Katie, this is gonna be fun. We're setting the table because as I told Jeff and I think David last week, Snowpiercer is one of my bane of existence movies. I've watched it twice just to prove that, you know, there was a period of about at least 5 years between viewings. I think I watched the second time for maybe Mark's show or something. And I was like, no, I still hate this movie. It is a metaphor in search of a movie. And I feel like this is better, I think, in a lot of ways than Snowpiercer, because at least there's more of a story to hang your hat on, but it still falls into the same traps of like, I've got something to say. I'm going to shoehorn it onto this structure, and whether or not it holds together as a coherent story doesn't matter because at least I got my message out. Yeah, that's just my kind of high level read of it. Let's talk about Nasha.
Okay.
She is a security guard on the ship.
She's kind of the like ship police.
Yeah. I think that could have been, I think that could have read as a stronger relationship for me if we'd gotten to know her, if there hadn't been so many like subplots and kind of messages bopping around this thing. Because when we first meet her, we meet her during one of Mickey's many expository monologues in montage with music playing. Mm-hmm. So they meet from across the lunchroom and she like kind of gives them the hey and kind of waves them over to sit down. I'm like, why? Like everything else we've seen of this guy on the ship, he's the laughing stock, he's the joke. It's Robert Pattinson, right? But it's not, he looks kind of like Jim Carrey in Dumb and Dumber. He's not like done up Rob Pattinson. He looks schlubby. He looks, and he acts kind of dumb. We're not meant to think that Mickey Barnes is going to be winning a Nobel Peace Prize or anything. And that's fine because that kind of plays into the story. But I didn't understand what she saw in him. And we never get we don't get to see her talk until she's been on screen for like 20 minutes, because a lot of it is, you know, I met Nasha, she's great. And we had a lot of sex and it was all crazy. And there's more sex and more montage. And then she finally starts talking. I'm like, wait a second, I don't know who you are. I kept thinking that she was some kind of a plant, like meant to, you know, seduce Mickey or whatever, because it was going to be some kind of a big joke among the rest of the crew. I didn't get it. And so when, to your point, she's holding the various Mickey clones and, you know, while they're dying and all that stuff, I'm like, where is this coming from? I just don't, I missed something. And that's why I'm hoping that it's fleshed out in the novel.
Yeah, for me, I don't know. It's one of those like love at first sight things. That's what I got from when they saw each other. And she knew that no matter what, that Mickey was gonna, you know, be with her. And she definitely like, what? Didn't she like punch somebody when somebody was like talking to him? It's like, what are you doing? And I mean, look, I know it's with the film, Mickey definitely has a thing with the ladies, because a woman who I felt like was not very subtle that she was normally seeing other women. She was definitely going to have sex with Mickey and was all for it and all that stuff. And I'm like, okay, well, it's space and it's the future. I don't know. I mean, you know, he's there, I guess, but also she seemed to pursue him and was very adamant about this happening. So I'm like, I mean, Robert Pattinson is a nice looking guy. He's not bad looking. And also from what I could see with the other people on the ship, he definitely was a leg up in looks. So that could probably be it too.
Maybe that's the thing though, is I feel like, because I'm with you, I feel like I'm reaching to justify these plot threads. First of all, that whole thing where the other ship's officer who's on the exploration party with her. Well, I'll just say it's her girlfriend. And we know that because at the end of the movie, we'll just call her Bi, because at the end of the film, during the big kind of hokey, like, we're colonizing the planet anyway, we're going to live in harmony, and Nasha's the president or whatever now, spoiler alert, banners at the bottom. We see the other crew member cuddling up with a new girl, and it's like, oh yeah, you don't have to be that obvious with it, because I get it. There's no mystery except why, again, she's wanting to fall in bed with Mickey. And then there's like a possible foursome situation with Mickey 18 and 17. There's this weird, it's almost like that bit in Superman 4 where they're rushing in and out of the apartment, Clark and Superman on that double date. I'm like, I'm sorry, I thought I was watching a movie that had big questions about the nature of reality and the ethics of cloning. I don't know what this Three's Company nonsense is.
My God, the fact that you brought up Superman 4. Oh, talk about the bane of my existence. Ugh.
It had Nuclear Man.
Oh my God. I remember watching that as a child and thinking, this is horrible. What are these people doing? But totally different section of film. I don't know. I think the main thing, like the reason why when that you could say coworker, I guess, or coexister on the ship, when she lost her girlfriend, it's the fact that I don't think they were since the whole point of like people came, it was almost like a Noah's Ark kind of thing, and they were trying to have people procreate to like, repopulate the planet, that was kind of looked down upon, which is like, okay, well, that's going to happen no matter what. And there's stuff could happen and stuff. I mean, I don't know. They also didn't go into the fact, like, did they test everyone to see if they could have children? I mean, who knows if some of these guys, these guys could be sterile. We don't know. And I mean, there's all that. You always have to put all the stuff on the ladies. So I don't know. Look, I think he's cute, even though he was he's just very adorable. And that's the thing. And it's like, I think it was more, they didn't want people to really like scratch their head about it. Cause it's like, look, dude, this is Batman. This guy was in Twilight. It's
no, that's outside the context of the movie. No one on that ship knows what a Batman is. Well, they might, cause it's 2054, but that's the thing, is like, there's a much better of this version of this movie that came out about 15 years ago. And it's called Moon. Did you see Moon by Duncan Jones with Sam Rockwell?
Yes. Right? Oh, okay. Yeah.
That movie is I'll call it like a low to maybe a mid-budget masterpiece. And it's really thinking person sci-fi. I've got the spoiler banner on, folks, but if you haven't seen Moon, go out and just buy it if you can find it. You'll thank me later. There's no need to rent it. But essentially, it's Sam Rockwell is this guy who's left all alone on this, this moon to, I guess, colonize it or make it ready for population by other people. I haven't seen the movie in a long time, so I could be getting some of the details wrong. But it's basically him and this robot/computer played by Kevin Spacey, or voiced by Kevin Spacey. Mm-hmm. And come to find out that he is one of several clones. There have been many versions of him there, and he gets really pissed off that, like, hey, what about, I might be a clone, but I still have, thoughts and feelings and emotions and possibly even rights. So at the end of the movie, again, as I recall, he makes his way off that moon and heads back to Earth to like give him what for. Again, it's kind of like the plot of Prometheus, another movie that isn't very good, but shares the same DNA as these other movies. So I'm thinking about that. Now, I talked about baggage, like people on the ship don't know what Batman is. So what I'm about to say is also not fair to the movie, except insofar as I'm someone who loves sci-fi films. And I love smart sci-fi films. And so when I go to see a movie that has a lot of prestige behind it, it's a guy who has directed very smart, movies with very weird genre films and even won an Academy Award for it. I have a certain expectation. So I'm sitting there like asking all these pretty crucial questions and being annoyed, like flicking these little flies away, like, you are not important, you're not important, you're overblown, what is this nonsense? I feel like I'm having to fight really hard to get to a story that I might as well have just stayed home and read the book, which, again, is what I'm about to do.
You got the book.
Well, I'm going to. I haven't started it yet, but I'm very excited to do so.
Well, I would have loved a creeper at my screening because I hear that they have little plush creepers that they're giving out to people. So, Warner Brothers, you can find my address because I would have liked that. Because even though they kind of look like a roly poly little bug, kind of mixed with like a sort of like guinea pig and I don't know. I mean,
and also the dune sandworm kind of mouth thing when you
yes,
get up on it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
but also it's like I don't know. Maybe it's because the movie was so long that the more I looked at it, the more I was like, oh yeah, you're kind of cute. Okay.
And that's something that I think is kind of an interesting theme to play on, because when we first see them, they're kind of barreling out of this, these ice caves, and we think they're going to eat Mickey, and it turns out that they don't, because they look kind of like these creepy monsters. They call them creepers, as you mentioned, but you wouldn't want one on you or near you. Certainly not that size. It looks like something kind of like what you're saying that we probably have on Earth. It's just like you put it under a microscope and that's what it would look like. But
Yeah.
then imagine it is like, 2 times bigger than you are, and it becomes a real problem. The issue I had, and this gets back to the kind of colonization subplot, which becomes very, I think, heavy-handed at the end of the movie. It's the same problem I have with a lot of the kind of the popular myths around, American colonization, which is that the Europeans came over and we wiped out the Indians, who are these, peaceful, peace-loving folks who never did anything wrong. There's no sense among these sentient creatures that they were anything but one large collective kumbaya, race of people, or, bugs, right? The Native Americans, before we got here, were slaughtering each other and fighting tribal warfare for like centuries, if not longer. The same as the Europeans were, the same as Africans, the same as anybody, because we're human beings. It would have been interesting if there had been factions among the bugs, but that would have required removing a lot of the other stuff that Bong Joon-ho wanted to talk about and making it a more complicated, nuanced story, because how many times have we seen, oh, they're not really evil creatures, they just look funny and they're just like us and we have to save them and become their friends. It gets really sticky and kind of muddy at the end, because they're like, well, if this is how y'all are going to be, we have the ability to wipe you out. And the implication is that they could, because they don't just say we're going to destroy you and your ship, they say humanity. So I don't know if they have the ability to collectively scream out across the galaxy and destroy Earth. That didn't make any sense, but I didn't get any answers to that because they were too busy, blowing up Mark Ruffalo.
I'm blanking on it because I actually despised it when it came out in the 90s. What's the movie with Casper Van Dien and Denise Richards?
Starship Troopers.
Yes. So maybe they have that Starship Trooper technology where it's like they can make those little giant asteroid things of like pure heat and shoot it across the stars and have it blow up South America and all that stuff. We don't know, Ian. We don't know what these creatures are capable of.
And that's kind of a problem, because you introduce a lot of stuff at the very end of the movie where it's like, no, we should have been dealing with these issues much earlier on. But instead we've got the problem of like, oh, Marshall has kidnapped one of the infant creepers and is holding it over one of the like garbage disposal chasms, which has like hot roiling lava that they basically use to create they dump their dead, they dump all this waste in this thing, it processes and then turns back into food and energy, which again, he's ripping off the Snowpiercer concept, I guess. But this little baby pill bug thing is hanging over this and basically by a rope for 20 minutes. That thing would have been cooked. There's no like, oh, we're going to rescue it and oh, it's still alive. No.
Well, maybe, but remember, Stephen Yeun was also in that little area for quite some time. He didn't really get charred or anything like that. But
I understand, and that was a problem too, because earlier on in the film, I'm like, no, you see that the tube is not that long. And also the heat, what we see of this lava room, it's a giant room full of lava. And this is like a heat vent coming out. You would at least be burned or heavily tanned or something, and he's hanging on to like the inside of a metal shaft. He's not hanging on for dear life. It's funny and everything because you got the Mickeys fighting and stuff up at the top and all that or whatever. I'm like, none of this works. It's not smart.
I mean, look, I'm not saying it's not smart, but for me, I just got that whole Temple of Doom vibe with it. And I was just waiting for someone to like grab the heart out and go, Kalima, Kalima, Ush Kalima, and like do that whole chant. So whenever I saw that and see the orange coming out, I'm like, oh yeah, it's not going to go well. But then, you know, we end up living. So that's fine. One of the things about the Creepers, though, to get back to that, I know what you were saying about the factions. The thing about the Creepers is that when you have the giant creeper that saved Mickey, basically, when everyone thought that they had killed him and all that stuff, what I got with the significance about the Creepers is that, I mean, these are like little babies that somehow got in the rock. I don't even know how that's possible. But that's a whole other thing. But the fact that the creeper knew each one of these creatures, and it's not like they were just all, it seems like they're all part of like one family, that it's not, it's, you know, you don't have an acceptable loss with someone when something's going on. It's like each one of these creatures, they're all from the same thread, and they're all part of the same unit, which I think is connected to the biggest creeper. And that to me, I thought was, I mean, again, very kumbaya, you know, these are all creatures that come together, and they're all trying to come together to save that teeny tiny little baby, because to them, nothing is insignificant about, you know, their kin. And then we've seen this entire movie where the way they treat Mickey, they're even mocking him when he's like spitting up blood. And it's like, you know, when he's being replicated, they're like, oh shit, we forgot the table. It's like, it's just the disrespect. It's like, look, I get it. This is his job because of what it's like, you know, this is the only way he get on this ship. He has no real skills. He doesn't have the money. He doesn't have the education. He doesn't have the pedigree or anything like that. But the fact that they treat him like so horribly, each one, and then they always joke, like each person that he really talks to, they always ask the same things, like, so how's it feel to die? Like, what's that like? Like, ew. And then it's like, okay, bye. But I don't know. It's like seeing the creepers banding together and like having basically what it seemed like the entire planet of these creatures coming together to save one of their own, when you just see what the humans have done to one of their own, I think is, I don't know. I think that's the whole reason why the creepers and that whole gathering and all that stuff. And then it's like, fine, if you kill another one of ours, then we're going to kill all of you. And it's like, all right, mama's not messing around.
Well, and I get that.
Yeah.
But I think that works better if we're not talking about sentient creatures, if we're talking about purely bugs as we know them with the hive mind. Because I don't know how smart or, you know, educated, whatever you want to call it, these creatures are, because they're able to, they whip up this, the humans whip up this translator that allow them somehow to talk to the bugs. They've figured all of this out in the 2 days that they've been on this planet or whatever it is during all this ruckus. So they can tell, you know, they form an alliance, Mickey does, with these creepers. So I understand what you're saying, but it's almost like they're trying to have their cake and eat it too. I understand the hive mind kind of situation. You had that more in Starship Troopers, where they're very obviously just like drones, and you had one like kind of master brain creature that was controlling all of this, but you didn't get the sense there was any individuality about, you know, the bugs that went out and attacked. They were all much like the humans on Earth. They were just being fed into this giant, you know, space cannon and sent out to kill. But if you're also saying like, oh, they're all part of like this giant family and these bugs all know each other, I'm like, sure, but especially if you're talking about a planet full of any kind of sentient life form, they're not all going to get along, even if they're related. There's not, you know, was there anybody who said, you know, well, can we trust any of these guys? That you say that these are the good ones. These are the good colonizers. These are the good invaders. Because let's talk about the end of the movie real quick. Flash forward to Donald Trump. I'm sorry. Mark Ruffalo's character has been destroyed. And they decide to keep the colony on the planet. And so the humans decide they're going to stay there, ostensibly with these bug creatures. If these bug creatures are so intent on keeping every one of their creatures alive, I don't know how that works, because there's going to be an accident, or one of the humans is going to get drunk and savagely kill one of these bugs. One of the bugs get drunk and savagely kill a person, right? So there is not going to be this harmonious peace. And it's just like the metaphor is getting drowned under, or like buried underneath the snow, as it were.
I mean, I understand what you're saying, but you're also like, you also have these scenarios where there are a lot of people and a lot of things getting drunk, and then chaos and murder happen. Possibly, maybe people won't get that drunk. There's always a possibility.
Katie, I understand the year is 2054, but these are still people.
No, I mean, they do have the new drug where they're like, what is it, snorting or sniffing the fuel for the flamethrowers, and that's supposed to be that thing. But I mean, they only have so many flamethrowers, and they've also made sure that that's illegal, and they know how addictive it can be and all that stuff. But I don't know. I think, I mean, I am naive enough to think that I would hope that, you can try and have this utopia, and that someone won't go nuts and just like try and eat one of the things. I mean, look, Toni Collette was supposed to be one of the sanest people on the ship. And what did she do? She just immediately like chopped off a tail, this little creature, put it in a blender and ate it. And like, this is great. It's like, oh, this is what we can use these animals for. I'm like, oh my God, that's ew. Why wouldn't you even want to have someone else try it before you? I mean, God, you just did that raw, like gross, like, ugh.
I didn't even think about that angle, but that character, especially being married to that man, that you're right. She would have done that here. Like, here, you try this. Yeah. Or she would have given it to Mickey.
Yes.
Because as we've established, part of the reason they want to colonize this planet is so they can reproduce and basically start their own sect of humanity, because Marshall was banned from Earth because of, in large part, from what I recall, because of these experiments and believing in the these cloning programs. Plus, he was kind of a religious zealot, and this comes out towards the very end in another one of the ham-handed speeches, like, we're going to repopulate the planet with this glorious white planet. It's going to be an all-white planet. It's going to be perfect, the perfect race. I'm like, yeah, again, stop beating me over the head. I get it. I'm concussed. I'm watching this movie.
Ian, golf clap on that recreation of Mark Ruffalo doing Donald Trump. That was excellent. I almost, if I had closed my eyes, I would have thought I was in Mickey 17 watching this movie, because you sounded exactly like him. That was creepy. I did not know you had the skill.
Well, thank you. I'll put it away for the remainder of the evening, or at least I'll try.
I will say, though, Mark Ruffalo had probably my favorites. Well, it wasn't necessarily his line, but the line that came after it, when he's at the congressional hearing, and he was like, I'd like to thank you for this invite, for coming here today. And then the chairwoman was like, you were subpoenaed, sir. You were subpoenaed, sir. Yeah. And I was like, I just cackled. That was really funny, because his face being like, thank you so much for this being my choice. And I'm like, yeah, no, you had to come. This is a law.
Yeah. That was funny. I'll give them that. But I also want to, because the kumbaya aspect of it gets back to something else that I was thinking about after the movie was over, which is, yes, at the end, Marshall has been defeated. So is his wife. And so the people decide to stay on the planet and kind of complete their mission, not in the kind of like eerie religious, racial purity way, but just like, hey, we're going to start over. But part of the reason that these people were selected is because they were fans of Marshall, of his personality, and they believed in the mission of what he was doing. It's, again, not subtle, but before, in the flashback to where before Mickey left Earth, there was a news reporter who was doing interviews with people in this like station or whatever, and he had a whole bunch of Marshall super fans all wearing red hats, talking about how great he is and they do anything for him. And then when we first see Marshall, like really, he's in the lunchroom of the spaceship. He comes in, he's even doing the Trump dance, which is great. I love it because Bong Joon-ho and I think Mark Ruffalo and a bunch of other people associated with the movie have denied that this is a Trump performance or that it was inspired by him. I'm like, okay, that reminds me of the reason I don't respect James Cameron anymore, is because when Terminator Genesis came out, there was like one of those little press junket things. It was like, oh yeah, Genesis, this is the movie that I would have made after Terminator 2 if I'd kept going. I'm like, you're full of it. You're a lying sack, and I can't believe anything you say anymore, including that Avatar is worth watching. That's another series where the big evil colonizers come to a planet and they come across a species and they all get along great.
I mean, look, everything we're talking about is basically Dances with Wolves in space. That's what this is. Mickey 17 is Dances with Wolves in space. All the avatars are Dances with Wolves in space.
and that's yes. And the problem is people keep bringing that up because Dances with Wolves was 36 years ago, 1990. Instead of keeping up with remaking that movie, why don't you take that premise and expand upon it and give some like juicy conflict or say something new with it? My point that I was so circuitously trying to make was at the end when the rest of the ship decides to stay and populate the planet, you'd think there'd at least be some kind of a ruckus between Nasha and Mickey and their crew who have defeated Marshall and the true believers who were like, what, 95% of that crew were meant to believe? Not necessarily the drooling, like fervent, like red hat wearers, but at least on board enough to commit to, I'm going to leave planet Earth, even though I'm leaving behind desperate circumstances, to go out and possibly die on an ice rock at the ass end of space. They have to have something or someone to believe in. So when their leader is taken out by these other people, other members of the ship, some people might call that mutiny and not be willing to sit down and say, yes, we've got a new leader who is the one who led the insurrection against, Marshall.
I can see where you would think that. And yes, I think there would be at least some, maybe not. I do agree that the majority of the people who were on the ship were huge fans of Marshall. However, as does happen when you look behind the curtain and when, you meet your heroes, you tend to be disappointed and then realize like, yeah, this probably was a mistake. Okay, well, I'm on a ship in space and basically can't go back. So F it. I guess I'm just going to see what's going to happen. But that doesn't necessarily, because look at the scientists that were doing all the experiments on Mickey. The majority of them were all douchebags, dickheads that were like, okay, can you raise your hand? Like, oh, look at that. That's cool. And they were taking notes and, doing the hypotheses and, all that stuff. But at the end, you see the majority of those scientists, especially like the little one with the glasses, who was like, this isn't right. Like, what are we doing? Like, but Mickey did so much for them and the entire ship. It's like without Mickey, like being out there in the atmosphere, trying different things in case there's the flu-like thing or whatever stuff was going on. And it's like, and they had to make, which I think is a thing for COVID-19. It's like, all right, this is why we have to test people on the vaccines and stuff like that. The movie, it goes through a lot of the points that Bong Joon-ho was like, here's movement experimentation, here's the things for vaccine, here's colonialism. It's doing a lot. But at the end, I think, when Marshall was on his high horse doing his stuff and basically putting the entire ship at risk for something that I think the ship didn't even think was worth it. That's when the majority of the people on the ship were like, yeah, no, there's a reason why they kicked you off of Earth, and now I'm seeing it, and your wife. But I do think, I think they kind of captured some of those people that were still with Marshall at the end, because they had him in those little, like, almost dog kennel with little prisons.
They had a few of them, but it certainly, again, I'm just thinking about the logic of this guy in this expedition, and he was such a charismatic, popular figure among his fans. I would think that if you're telling me that you now have 17 people running this ship and the other like 500 or whatever are locked up in the brig, that I might understand. I might think about, okay, realistically, how long can you perpetuate that before you run out of food to feed the prisoners or whatever? But again, it just doesn't, as far as the events that happen on the ship, I don't know how big the crew is. Did they ever say how many people were on this spaceship?
Let me see. I don't think so. That was one of the things I didn't.
Because it seemed
I didn't write it down. I was actually wondering that too, and I was also, so it was 4.5 years ago, right? So they've been on the ship for like 4 years or 4.5 years, because it was when Mickey and Timu, is that his name? Not Timu.
Stephen Yeun's character, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Stephen Yeun. But when they
or Timo.
Timo, when they got busted, and then that was like 4. So this is a journey, and in that amount of time, you see the time, 4.5 years. What happens usually in that amount of time? Elections happen in that amount of time, Ian. Yeah.
Yes.
See, there you go.
But here's the other, I'm going to call it disgusting thing about this movie. And I don't know if it's failing because people aren't interested, if they figure it's going to be on streaming in 2 weeks or what. I don't think Pattinson's enough of a draw. But I think there's also this heavy-handedness and this one-dimensional stereotype cartoon of Trump and his supporters, which is very easy to do, and it's a target-rich environment for Hollywood. I mean, you look, it's every weekend on SNL. But when they have that line where Nasha's like, yeah, and you also lost your last 2 elections, there's no doubt that that is a barbed jab at Donald Trump. And this is a movie that's coming out in early March, which meant it was done and ready to go at the end of last year. I think the people at Warner Brothers were banking on, so this is gonna be a last jab at the Orange Man that we're never gonna have to think about again. So it's, this is your epitaph, you son of a whatever. And, somebody is getting a different kind of a laugh right now. And so it just lands as very cringe, like, I just don't get it. If you want to have that allegory, that's fine, but maybe look into what causes people to, follow that line of political or religious thinking. What would it mean for them to go out in space? What would it mean for them to go out in space with other people who might not agree with them? And then they run into aliens and they have to figure this all out. There's a lot of cool stuff to explore in a movie. I just think that you're right. If this were a series and like every episode dealt with one of the issues that they put out here, you could have a great 8-episode Hulu series called Mickey 17.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I could see it still becoming a series. It has grossed worldwide over $52 million, which actually was actually higher than they thought it would do. However, with the full production cost and marketing, I think they have to make $250 million, which it's like, I don't see that happening. I enjoyed it. I liked the world building that Bong Joon-ho made. I liked the funniness. I think Robert Pattinson, the fact that even though the majority of the Mickeys seem like it's basically the same Mickey, you do see like subtle differences in each one. And I think it's funny when Nasha actually brings that up to him. It's like Mickey 13 was really needy. and are clinging and stuff like that. And then you've got Mickey 18, who's like, oh man, you're still, it's like, who had to be the one to tell him? It's like, you're still worried about that thing about mom and stuff. It's like, look, you didn't cause the crash. You pushed a button. That didn't cause the other car to hit us. That had nothing to do with it. You need to get over it. And like that, it was done, because it's like he's talking. I mean, he's talking to himself, but it's like he has that realization that all the other ones didn't. And sometimes you need that. I don't know. There is a lot of I don't know if it's definitely heavy-handedness, because I mean, it did take me about a week and a half to get that 4.5 years for the journey. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, now I see what it was doing there. Okay, yeah. I'm glad I wrote that down. But I like the different meanings and the subtle yet not subtle messages that he's putting in the film. I think this wouldn't be the same without Robert Pattinson. I don't know. You know what? Who would have done a good job with this? Anton Yelchin. If he was still alive, that would have been. He would have done a really good job with this character. I mean, obviously that can't happen because he's passed away, but it's like, just thinking about it, it's like, I can't see anyone else. It's like, well, no, I can see one. But I mean, I love the different characters and the actors. I love that Cameron Britton, who's in so many different things. Like, he's in Manhunter. He played Kemper, and he's in the Umbrella Academy and everything. He's the big guy who's a scientist who's basically like the science guy for Marshall, that usually when something happens, Marshall goes directly to him. Yeah. Mm-hmm. He's a great character actor. I love seeing him in things, and seeing Steven Yeun as like just a dick. It's always one of those things. It's like, when there's an actor who's usually a good guy or something, when he just plays against type, I'm like, yes, I love that. So, and also, having Toni Collette just be, it's like whispering in Mark Ruffalo's ear when he's saying something stupid. It's like, no, you can't do that. It's like, oh yes, that's right. My beautiful wife, like, she's this and this and this. So I know believe me, I knew people probably wouldn't enjoy this film. I like the different things, but I definitely feel like that dream sequence at the end was completely ridiculous and totally should have been just cut out. It just didn't make any sense to me, especially after the film definitely felt a little, that was just that, like, it's like, why are you doing this? Icing.
You know what would have worked? I just pieced this together when you were talking, because I hate that dream sequence too. I thought it was cheap. And, just also the whole thing of, like, during the inaugural ceremony or whatever, they blow up the printing chamber, but they drag it out into the snow. Like, they took, again, I don't know how big this ship is, what kind of heavy moving equipment they have, but they got this chamber out into the middle of the snow in order to blow it up in this big ceremonial thing. I'm like, I don't buy any of this. But you know how that dream sequence could have worked? Is if it wasn't a dream sequence, it was almost an epilogue to the film, where Mickey goes, they don't blow up the chamber, they just decide to decommission it or whatever. But maybe at a mid or end credit sequence, Mickey is just like bumming around the chamber, and he hears something, and it sounds like something is being printed, and he looks into the room, and it's Marshall being printed again, and it's one of the other people from the ship who's trying to, like, resurrect their hero. And that's the cliffhanger for the sequel, or maybe Mickey shoots him in the face. I don't know, but it's just something like that. It's a cool idea, but don't have it be a cheap rug pull dream sequence.
Yeah, no, I like that. That would have been good. I would have liked that ending. Again, I just feel like this would have been better as a series, but as a friend of mine wrote, it's like, and actually this, I think, really sums it up. This is the type of movie that you get to make after you've won the Oscar and they give you an unlimited budget. And I'm like, yeah, actually, I think it pretty much is like, you know what? I'm just going to throw all these things in it, see what sticks, get a great cast of people. And it's like, if you like it, you do. If you don't, you don't.
Yeah, and I appreciate that sentiment. I think that would be a dream situation. I can't imagine. Is this Warner Brothers? I can't
Yeah.
imagine they're very happy. But I will say, I've been doing a lot of criticizing of it, and this is sort of the thing that breaks my heart. Is this is a gorgeous looking movie. There's I think a lot of the special effects are great. The production design is on point. I love the costuming, like it's in all the still shots of the two Mickeys out like in the snow and those kind of like the flap hats and the flak jackets. It all looks really cool. I'm like, I just wish this had been written by Duncan Jones. I even like the direction of it. Bless you.
Thank
One
you.
thing I was very curious about, and
Sorry.
bless you again. I don't know, again, because there was like pickups and some tinkering before they released this movie. I don't know what the timeline is or if they could even work this quickly, but one of the really eerie parallels was there's an assassination attempt on Marshall's life. And what happens? He gets shot and the bullet grazes his cheek and goes into the wall. And there's like this whole big kerfuffle about that attempt. And I was like, this feels like it's something that could have been inserted in, July or August of last year. Like, oh, we could incorporate this to drive home the metaphor that we're totally not trying to make. Or it's one of those creepy coincidences where this was in the novel, 2 years before it actually happened.
I think it's one of those creepy, like, art imitating life coincidences that whatever, fate would have it, just happens to happen. I always remember when We Bought a Zoo. I think it was a week before We Bought a Zoo came out, and the guy who actually had a home zoo was like killing all of his animals, and it's like, wow, that's horrible timing for that to happen. I mean, that's a horrible situation, but damn, that's really bad timing for this movie because they had already planned it, and ouch.
Or it could just be very powerful marketing that backfired.
That's it. It got into his brain. It's like, no, you didn't buy a zoo.
All right. Well, before we go, we've got a bunch of comments from throughout the hour that we're going to take a quick look at. Wait, hold on. David Wilt says the plot feels like it borrows some from the original Blade Runner. Yes, I was thinking about Blade Runner too, but this is different in that these aren't androids. They're cloned people, which I don't even, that's another big idea you could get into. Are they even human anymore? They've got the memories, they've got the DNA and stuff, but they're not even like test tube babies. They're just literally printed out meat puppets, I guess.
That's the thing. Do they have a soul?
One of the obnoxious things, I know I'm sidebarring again, but they might even have rule of three'd this, but they keep asking Mickey, how does it feel to die? What's it like to die? And we never get an answer. Yeah. And I don't get the feeling that I think in a better movie, like one that was written by Duncan Jones, not answering that question would have meant something. Like, oh, it is an unanswerable question, so we're going to pose it because people are asking all the time, but we are not going to answer it. In this movie, it kept popping up. I'm like, are you going to do anything with this? It felt like it just kept getting swept under the rug by, subplot 76.
Well, I think the reason why it was just an insult to the fact that they don't care about Mickey. They just want to have that. It's like, so out of my own curiosity, what does it feel like to die? Like, it's like, I mean, and he's died in so many horrific ways that it's like, I mean, you don't really want the answer because you're just asking me because you're a jerk.
Yeah, that's a good point. And also, I think one of the more interesting questions is not so much what's it like to die, but what's it like to be dead? Like, is there the big white light? Do you just kind of like turn off, and then when you come out of the printer, you're turned back on again? Like, it almost reminds me of, I don't think we've talked about it before, but you've seen Martyrs, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And the whole point of that movie is to try and basically suck out the life experience of like just after someone dies through like horrific means. But yeah, that movie actually had an answer. It was mysterious, but at least it was an answer. All right. Razorblade Mango. I thought of Armand White during it. Years ago, he wrote that Ruffalo's presence in anything gives away the film's political bent. I tend to agree. So I found it amusing to see Ruffalo as the obvious Trump parody.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he was, for what he was called upon to do, he did it well. I remember hating Snowpiercer the first time I watched it. Cynical Taylor, you can't leave me with this. Did you watch it again and did you still hate it? I don't know. That seems like one of those cliffhangery responses. Bong Joon-ho fans made fun of me for how heavy-handed the messages in his movies are. You know, here's the thing. I thought the same of Snowpiercer. I don't remember Okja. Fowley asked me last week if I'd seen it. I'm pretty sure I did when it first came out, but I don't remember anything about it. But I felt like Parasite was the best version of Bong Joon-ho doing a message movie that cared just as much about the story and making things weird and saying stuff about like the caste system and all that, but it still holds together as a message movie and as a full movie. What do you think about Parasite, real quick?
No, I like Parasite, and like you said about the whole thing about I'm blanking because I'm thinking of Okja, and I was going to answer your question about Okja. But I mean, Parasite is just, it's so beautiful to have in that house, and then the different factors, like the guy who made the house first, like had the hidden thing, and how, I mean, I can understand why it did win Best Picture. I liked 1917 better. But no, I think the message of Parasite is definitely more I don't know, it's more universal, and it's like subtle, but it's not. And the direction is amazing. I mean, it's a great film. But Okja, my answer for Okja was more about like animal cruelty and like how, you know, we're making these animals to end up like killing them, and especially like the sexual assault when you see that up close and what that was like. That was like, yeah, this is what we're doing to these creatures that we can just eat vegetables.
Yes, but they're so tasty.
I
No.
I like chicken nuggets. Yeah.
Look, when you can 3D print me out a perfect chicken nugget, I will take that and save all the chickens. But okay, then. Oh, this is a good one. Eldiza38 coming at us from Twitch says best viewers on streamboo.com. Remove the space. I will not be doing any of that. So thank you.
I don't think you should.
I was warned when I opened this up to Twitch that there'd be a lot of bots, and people have told me, don't read the bot comments. I have to read the bot comments. They're the best. And then Razorblade Mango closes out Ruffalo, Bong Joon-ho, and others saying this movie isn't a satire of Trump as a level of gaslighting I can't comprehend. Yes. And we kind of addressed that with my whole James Cameron story, but you know, they're going to do what they're going to do. I don't know why they don't lead into it unless they fear that by saying, yes, we're making fun of Trump or whatever, especially given that the election didn't go that the movie suggests they hoped it would, that they don't want to turn off half their audience. I got news for you. The audience, they read, they watch TV, they watch the internet. They're going to catch on real quick what this thing is. And if they don't, and they go to the movie, you're going to have walkouts. So I don't know. I say, be honest at all costs, as much as you can, and let the chips fall where they may.
Look, I mean, there are definitely aspects of Trump in Ruffalo's character, but there's also so many aspects of so many politicians. I mean, the giant teeth, the fake smile, you know, always like, oh, we're friends, we are. It's like, no, you're not. But it's like, I understand why you're saying that. But yeah, I mean, it's for them not to say it's not. I mean, it's hard to have that influence because there are so many comical things about it. But yeah, I mean, come on, we're not dumb.
Right. And the other, one of the reasons I'm curious to read the book, and I think it's the thing that compelled me to finally buy the book, is reading that. I want to say it's from Screen Rant, so I apologize if it's not, but, and they're doing the comparison from the novel to the film, is that Marshall was not an idiot in the book, which makes me wonder if he is more of a Peter Wayland kind of character from Prometheus, which I think is much more interesting in getting a truly charismatic person who could be a sleazeball, a dirty businessman or whatever, kind of behind the scenes, but getting people on his side to go out and do this mission. I feel like it's almost like I can't remember the character's name, but the movie Up. He was the explorer guy that everybody looked up to and they were trying to find. And at towards the opening of the third act was when they realized, oh no, this guy is actually evil and he's trying to he spent his life hunting this bird and he'll do anything to get it. That heel turn, I think, is a real kind of a gut punch for the characters and the audience. Whereas right here you expose this, he's capital V villain man, and there's nothing interesting about him for the next 2 hours.
I can see that. No, yeah. I mean, it would be interesting to see the Christopher Plummer aspect of in Ruffalo's performance. What you were saying about the tastiness, it reminded me of when Mickey was eating that fake meat that just looked gross, and they all looked at him, and then he had the allergic reaction to it and stuff like that. And I was like, oh. I mean, just like meat jello is not really, fine. You know what? I'm going to burn it with the world. I don't know. I don't think I can handle that. No, thank you, science. No, thank you, future.
Have you ever had bone marrow?
I have. Bone marrow's tasty.
Yes.
Meat jello, though, is not the same thing. Especially, I mean, come on, Ian. It's like, and I don't know. It's like the look and the way Pattinson was eating it. Nope, not for me. I'm done.
He definitely sold it on not selling it. So yeah. All right. Well, Katie, we're at about time here, and I really appreciate you hanging out and talking through this movie with me. It's great that we can appreciate a lot about it, but also come away with different conclusions and different feelings, but also have a fun civil conversation. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And as you said, look, we may agree or disagree, but I love that we're doing this without shouting and yelling. And I had my points, you had yours. I took away a lot from what you said. And as always, I love being here and talking flicks with you, my friend.
Well, I do too. And next week, I know you saw this, and I didn't watch your reaction video because I don't want to be influenced or spoiled. But next week, we're going to talk about Novocaine, and I hope you can join me for it. You're clapping your hands in excitement, which means you're either really excited to talk about how much you love this movie or excited to tear this down on a live stream. Either way, I win.
Oh, my friend. I'm very excited because I had my initial reaction out of the film. I also saw it in 4D. Which I'm going to do my review. I didn't get to do it after because I was too jacked, but I have never been in a 4D theater before. I am so glad that was my first time because the movie is I think 90 minutes or so. Something like that. That was 75 minutes of just nonstop roller coaster. And it was amazing. Especially since I had seen it on Thursday and the 4D was on Monday. Once stuff started happening, I turned to my friends. I'm like, oh my God, if this is the way it's going to be, you need to hold on to your butts because this is nothing compared to the rest of this is the easygoing part right now. It's so, and then one of my friend that I took, he was like, look, I like the 4D. I like the movie, but I just loved hearing you freaking cackle and having the best time. I am a super fan of 4D now, especially with the action adventure. And to me, this was an action adventure, romantic comedy. I've got a cougar crush on two of those kids that it's unfortunately, I remember when they were born. So it just makes me feel icky, even finding them attractive. And yet, kudos to you, gentlemen. You guys are doing a great job. So good job, mom and dad that are famous. You did well.
Well, we'll talk about all of that. I'm ecstatic that you got to experience 4D. I saw it. I saw Flight Risk a couple months ago with David Fowley in 4D, and that was the first time I think we had done it. And you're right. It's like a party in a movie theater, especially if you've got like a few other people in there with you and they're newbies. Like we were just like in hysterics and just, I felt like I've never been high, but I felt like I was on some serious drugs because it's just, especially if the movie is over the top ridiculous. And in the case of Flight Risk, unforgivably bad. But because of the 4D experience, it became one of my top movie experiences of the last decade. So I'm probably just going to see Novocaine in like a regular theater experience, but I'm so happy that you got to see it in 4DX.
Yeah.
Not having seen it, but yeah.
I would recommend seeing it in 4DX because that was great. I had no idea because they had the thing. It's like, oh, you can have water, no water. It's like, well, okay, it didn't rain. They didn't go into water. And like, no, I mean, spoilers. It's like, this should be fine. And I mean, when someone has some blood, it's like, I'm like, oh my God, was that supposed to be the blood splatter? It's like, what? Amazing.
Okay. Last thing I'll ask about Novocaine, because I was on the fence. I feel because I'm excited to see this movie. It's one of my most anticipated movies of the last few months because I think it's a great trailer. I hope that the rest of it matches up to the trailer, but I feel like going to 4DX, I don't know if I'm going to be distracted or so like giddy about the experience that I won't be able to focus on what I'm hoping is actually a good comedy. With Flight Risk, I honestly didn't care if I missed something because I'm like flopping around in my seat. But with Novocaine, you'd seen it once and then you saw it again. Do you think you would have enjoyed it as much the first time in 4DX?
That is a very good question and a very challenging question because since I knew what was going to happen, there's certain aspects of it that I feel like I would have missed some of the dialogue because I was having so much fun and laughing. So, I mean, look, if you've got the bankroll, go see it the first time, in a regular theater, and then go see it in 4DX to just freaking have some goddamn fun in a theater. Because, man, like you said, honestly, that is one of the most fun times I've had, theater or not, in 10 years. I mean, my face hurt from laughing and cackling so much. That's how much fun it was.
Yes, and the last thing I will say about 4DX, because I didn't say this on the live stream when Fowley and I talked about Flight Risk with Mark, but you got to be careful. This is where the chain wallet or the zipper pocket comes in handy because I actually lost my phone in the theater, and you know that it's all black seats, all black theater. So I had to go back in there with an usher and a flashlight and David Fowley, and we're rooting around in the seats trying to find my phone. We did find it. And also David said, we should just come back here with bags because there is so much money back here. People just
really
losing change and all this other stuff because these things, it's like being on a roller coaster. It shakes everything out of you and you don't even realize it.
Oh yeah. Like I had no idea. I mean, when you go in, you've got the bars in front of you. And I was like, is this going to come down like Jurassic Park and like the little Mr. DNA is going to pop up and that's what's going to, because it's going to be a ride like that. Oh no, that's all about the wind and the bullet. And someone just got shot in their face. It's like, oh my God, what?
All right. Well, we'll talk. I feel like we got the 4DX part of it out of the way, so we can talk about the movie itself next week. So, folks, join us back here next week. I'm not sure what day that'll be. It'll be either Tuesday or Wednesday because that's kind of how we roll around here. But Katie Gladwell, thank you very much for hanging out and talking about Novocaine, but also Bong Joon-ho's Mickey 17. Folks, be sure and check out. Oh, you got a little mini poster. That's cool.
Oh, I've got like 8 of them.
Nice. Well, they should have. Yeah. Well, they gave you an even number. There you go. But so yeah, Katie Glidewell, all your stuff, your information is down below, along with all of other Earth's Mightiest critics. So folks, be sure and check all that out and support us. If you liked this show, please like, subscribe, and ring that bell for notifications and all that good stuff. And yeah, until next time, whenever that is, whatever that is, thank you very much. Take care and go replicate yourself. Or don't. That was a terrible way to end the stream. I don't know what I'm talking about.